Subscribe now and press the bell icon. Never miss an update.
My name is Gery and I've been helping SPYM. This site is for boys only who have been involved in crime and have been affected by drugs. So often the drugs has led to a criminal act. And because of that, they end up here. This is actually the only place in India that a site that has been established for children involved in crime and drugs. The only one in the country. So the people who are coming in here could be from 7 years of age to 17. As soon as they reach 18, they're classified as an adult in the Indian system. And then they have to go to another facility. But this is basically for very young children. I'd say the majority are probably 14, 15 years of age on average, but it does do quite, there's another centre which is for boys just doing drugs, and another centre for girls just using drugs. But for crime and drugs, only here. Basically, the SPYM has been operating for over 3 decades, and it operates in various parts of the country. So it's not only in Delhi, it is also in Kerala, it is in, you won't know these states, but it's in a number of different states of the country. It has a particular focus on what you call marginalized communities, communities that have either been heavily in poverty, women, children, LGBT, a whole range of marginalized communities within the country. Drugs, alcohol, that is a key continuum. Throughout the whole 3 decades, a lot of it has been drugs. Then by the time the 90s were coming in, it then became HIV injecting drugs. And then became hepatitis because of the mix of the injecting. It does a lot of work on advocacy and research. So without the research informs how to do the work. If you don't do the research, like for this children, we would not know how to actually deal with children. Dealing with children is a fairly new concept. SPYM only started 10 years ago, working with children affected by drugs. Before that, it was always adults. It's very complex working with children. They have many other issues. Since about 87, this letter was from the Prime Minister, who was eventually assassinated. His name was Rajiv Gandhi. This relationship with the Prime Minister of the country was operating for quite a long time. And this letter, you can't read it, but it is an example where we actually have evidence that there was communication between SPYM and the Prime Minister of the country. So that is a good thing when it comes to advocacy. Basically in India, the situation of children using drugs, it has always been happening, but it often wasn't documented. And the age of the children as the years have progressed have got younger. So if we were to look at children 10 years ago, many would be initiating drugs 18, 19 years of age. Now, many are initiating drugs at 12 years of age. Not injecting drugs, but inhalants, tobacco, alcohol. So this is quite common. So the age group has dropped. And the youth population of this country is around 37% of the population. So when you put 1.4 billion and 37% are under 30, it's a large group of people. So the world of India has changed. And the drugs that the children are often using at the beginning is tobacco, alcohol, inhalants, and also cannabis. Cannabis is grown locally in the country. That does not need to be imported. And these figures are very small. I'm not going to go into it, but whatever, because the population of this country is so big, population of 1.4 billion of children, it's going to be a lot of children. Anything with that size of population ends up being hundreds of thousands. And a lot of these drugs are very easy to access and they're affordable. So we get a lot of what they call school dropouts. They're in school, drugs become a problem, they leave school. So this is a big percentage of this group of children that you will see later. They never finished school, or they did do school, but they left very early and very young. So this becomes a difficulty. What we call dysfunctional families. Families who are also alcoholics. Father would be alcoholic, mother is smoking, maybe father and mother is also injecting. So a lot of this becomes a problem. Because of the drugs, and because they're young, they got involved in crime. So the crime that happens with the children here can be common theft to murder. So we have children here who've actually murdered somebody else. Knife, usually a knife. Guns are not so popular compared to the United States, but knifing can be an issue. So they've come from small crimes, but crimes enough for the police and the courts to send them to this environment. So really what SPYM have been doing is, it does what they call community-led peer intervention. So children of a similar age group, target those children, whether they're in school or out of school, but mainly out of school, who are creating problems in the community. So when we spoke to, actually about 10 days ago, we had a representative from the White House, the man who's in charge of drug policy for the United States, Dr. Rahul Gupta. He was here 10 days ago at this centre with a couple of his advisors. They came to this centre and he was asking them, the children, he spoke fluent Hindi so he could speak to the children, and he asked them, how much are you spending a day on drugs? Now many people here will only be earning 300 rupees a day on average. The children were spending 1,500 to 2,000 rupees per day on drugs. Now children, they weren't working, so clearly they're involved in other ways of getting that money. Because that's, I don't know what it is, it's, people here will know what 2,000 rupees worth in US dollars. But for people who are earning only 300 rupees, like $3 a day, these people were spending $3, yeah. Oh, yeah, a lot. And they're not working. They're all teenagers. So it takes a lot of money and a lot of effort to get these drugs. And they're buying it. They're getting the money to get the drugs. So this place was established 2010. A little bit of a snapshot history. The person who was in charge of Delhi, they call Chief Minister. And it's a big responsibility because there's 20 million people in this city. That Chief Minister said no child in Delhi uses drugs. And then the Chief Justice of India, married to his wife was a social worker who worked at the children's court. And she was seeing all these children coming in for drugs. And the Chief Justice in India is the third most important person in the country. You have the President, the Prime Minister, and Chief Justice. So very important person. He opened this site and said children in Delhi need somewhere to go when they've got drug problems and they're involved in crime. So he came and the one who was the former Chief Justice of India, he also came. So we're talking some of the most important people in the country opened this site and believed that this site was worth operating. There is also a women's centre, because women are also using drugs, but that's not here. It's in another part of Delhi. And one of the arrangements, which was a bit of a miracle, is the building is provided by the government, electricity and water is provided by the government, and nothing else. So it operates on the kindness of others who make donations for this site to be actually operating. Because every child who comes here is for 3 months and they do not pay a rupee. Everything is free for the child. So it's a bit unusual that in a place, a poor country like India can actually have a place where you don't pay a single cent to come here. But it's been operating like that since the beginning. So it's fundamentally a 50-bedded one, but sometimes it's gone up to 100 children. But when it went up to 100 children, the quality was going down because there were too many children. And the children came from very difficult backgrounds. So they get presented by the Juvenile Justice Board. They come through a court system and get directed to arrive here because it's an order. They can't go through any other, that a parent can't just deliver the child. That's not the formal way of doing it. They have to come through another system. And they also get presented, this is the thing, because they're involved in crime, they have to present themselves to the Juvenile Justice Board, who review the child's progress. So every 2 weeks they must be taken and reviewed, because they want to understand what the progress of the child is, because they were involved in a crime, a criminal act, but they also want to understand how are they progressing by staying here. So someone has to go with them. The staff have to take the child to the Juvenile Justice Board. They get a general orientation when they arrive, because for a child it can be quite a frightening place. This is not home, and it's not a jail, although they're not allowed to leave. They have to stay here, because under the criminal sort of justice, they must stay here. So they get an orientation, and the orientation happens through another child that is staying here. So it's not an adult that is doing the orientation. The children do the orientation. I'm here, you're my age, I will show you around the site. And they do an assessment. The staff here, the counsellors, do a full comprehensive assessment. Background, drug use, drugs in the family, all of these things are listed. They do a psychological assessment, because we want to find out if there are other issues. There could be psychiatric issues, issues of depression. This is all being assessed. They also do an education assessment, because there's a lot of illiteracy. Sometimes 30%, 40% are illiterate. So when you're doing an education program, which is also run here, you have to break the children. There's no point having a group of children who are illiterate with the literate group, because the literacy group will be, their minds are in a different, they can do mathematics, they can do Hindi, they can do all these, but the illiterate groups don't understand. So we have to split them, like we are going to split you into different groups. The children have to be split according to their capacity to do literacy. So there is a literacy, and we did this based on, we did research here over 1 year, whether we could actually see that by offering them a program of education, it will have an impact by the time they leave, even if it's only after 3 months. And we have proven that their education capacity has increased. And the psychological assessment, we did the psychological assessment at the beginning, and we did it after 3 months. So at the beginning, a simple question. If you had an opportunity to kill yourself, would you kill yourself? And it was something like 30% would kill themselves. By the time they left, it was down to 5%. So children's self-esteem and belief had increased. So this is why we do these sort of things. Now, when it comes to detoxification, they do not detox here. So there's been an arrangement. It used to be 7 hospitals. After COVID, a lot of the hospital beds were taken up. So now we have, at the moment, we have 3 hospitals. So they detox at the hospital. They get psychiatric, psychological assessments again, and also testing of HIV, hepatitis, any other tuberculosis, diseases. This is all done in the hospital. And there are designated ward for children from here and from the other sites. They don't go to the adults section. It's a children's area. And then after that, and if they do have tuberculosis, they do have HIV, etc., then a program is arranged to deal with those issues. Because we need to understand, if they're coming back here, that maybe the child has a psychiatric problem, and this is not the place to come. Because the staff here, and this is not a psychiatric hospital. It has to be assessed. So they get individual counselling, they get like a group therapy counselling session, family counselling. So the family comes here every Saturday. And there's also what they call Just for Today program, which is part of a rehabilitation, because when they come back here, detox is finished, now it's rehabilitation time. And they have legal counselling. So there are lawyers who come here and explain what is the issue. Because if you've committed a crime, you're going to have to work out what are we going to do. And the family need legal counselling. They do not understand the law. So all the different types of therapies, we will explain it further, but they have art therapy, music therapy, dance therapy, because the children are here for 3 months. And what we keep saying to everybody is this is not a babysitting centre. We're not here to just dump children and then they do whatever they want. There is a very strict program. Day starts at around 7:30 in the morning and finishes at about 9 p.m. There is time for breaks, but there is a dedicated program for the children. Because when you leave here, you're going to face the real world again. This is not the real world. The real world is outside. They have to understand this. So they need all these types of therapies to build up their confidence, know what they're going to do with their next chapter in their life, because they're still teenagers, and how do I move forward without committing another crime and even getting away from the drugs. So yoga is very important. Occupational therapy. So for example, all the food that you had here was done by the people who work here, and many of them were former clients. So they had come here and they decided, I like to work here. So those people were often the ones that made the food today. And they've got a kitchen, there's a little cafe that they run. That's part of their occupation and getting them to do meaningful work. And you get paid to do that work. Not when you're doing occupation, but when you leave here and you want to do another job, you get that. So basically, we're looking at the TC model, but we have to do it according to the context of children, India, money, all of these things. All of the service here is everything is for free. Family pay nothing, children pay nothing. So we have to be flexible to Indian conditions. And there's lots of outdoor and indoor games. So they also have to build up life skills. And many of them have come from families which are broken. mother has gone or father has gone, wherever. So they've got to build up a whole range of skills to fit into society. Without those skills, they will continue to be criminals, continue to remain dysfunctional. They will not be able to operate in the real world. So developing good relation, communication, building self-esteem, even doing things like, first aid, and of course, how to stay away from drugs. So they have vocational training. So here, this room can be used for plumbing. Some of them get computer skills, some of them get plumbing skills, some of them get how to know to do cooking, because cooking is a good trade, because people love food. So if you can know how to make food, you'll be able to do better in the outside world. And re-education. Many of them have had disrupted education. They never finish their schooling, so they have to get re-educated about different topics. So we're getting to the end. So since it opened, over 3,000 people, children, have come to this centre, which is quite a lot of children. And there's a lot more children outside who can't get in here because we have to maintain some sort of quality. As I mentioned, sometimes it used to go up to 100 children, but the quality of the service was being compromised. It wasn't the same. So now, I think at the moment, there's around 55 or 50, something like that, children here at the moment. 15 have been new admissions. Remember, they have to stay for 3 months. So we have to wait for one group to move out before you can take the new group in. We can't, and there's a constant changing in, out, in, out. And we also try to assist the children, for those who had problems at school, to get readmitted to school. Because once children start using drugs, many schools say, you have to leave. We will not accept you anymore. Even though the child would actually want to go back to school, the people who run the schools say that child is no longer allowed to come back. So this becomes a problem. And vocational training, since March 2001, we've had 60 children do vocational education because they'll have to get back into society and the community. So that's a general overview.